Hey, so it's been a little while since we did a woodworking video, and this video has taken me a while to make. There was a lot of procrastinating along the making of this box. I don't ever make any real plans for any projects, and that leads to me to consistently look at different possible design outcomes whilst I'm building a project. Anyway, so I'm making a coin cabinet for some silver coins I have. The wood I'm using is African rosewood. I've had it a little while. I've had this project planned for a little while. I've been waiting to make a box like this for a few years now, but I've never quite been able to come up with a modern looking take for these type of coin cabinets. The coin cabinets that you can buy are sort of traditional and old-fashioned looking, and I wanted to build something a little bit different with a bit of a modern twist on it. The inspiration for the shape of this box came from watching a video by Padula Studio. He made a fantastic looking jewellery box with rounded corners and some amazing handles. I'll leave a link to his video in the description box below to anyone who's interested in watching it. So I didn't want to copy his design exactly, I just wanted to use the same shape for the outside of the box. I knew over 18 months ago when I first bought the wood for this box that I wanted to use a combination of African rosewood and ash for the drawer fronts. So what I'm doing here is I'm using these radial corner guides. Each of these has a different radius for a corner. It's just simply mark it and then I'll take it over to the belt sander and I'll sand right up to the lines, coming back and finishing the sanding off with some hand sanding to really define the corner. I eventually want the box to have this sort of flush, round flowing corner effect to it. Right, so here I'm using a grooving bit in the router. I'm going to cut a shadow line around what will be the top and bottom of this coin cabinet. So moving over to the table saw now. These pieces are going to be the sides of the cabinet. I want the drawer fronts to sit flush with the sides of the cabinet, so I need to cut a groove into the edges. Because I'm using the standard blade here, which has a kerf of about 2.5mm, I'll need to do this in a couple of passes. I could have fitted the 6mm grooving blade I have, but the time it would have taken me to set it all up, I can get these cuts done. Now this next bit on the table saw is quite involved, so pay attention. Now because I've already cut a housing joint on the back side of this piece of wood, which the back panel will slide into, for the housing joints I need to make now for the drawers to slide in, I've had to set up a stop on the table saw fence. If I cut too far along this piece, the table saw blade will cut into the housing joint along the back side, or even worse, come out the back of the workpiece. I don't want that to happen, so I need to stop just short of the slot for the back panel, and then I can come back and finish the rest of this cut off with chisels. So after all that, I'm left with this. Because these cuts run against the grain, if I chisel them out now, I will rip out pieces of wood from the ends of these joints. So I need to split the grain like this before I can come back and clean the joints up. Now I spoke about the influence for the shape of this coin cabinet, and the influence for me to collect these coins comes from my granddad. He didn't have a huge expensive collection of coins, just mainly old British coins that he had picked out of his spare change over the years, and some foreign coins were sent to him by ex-work colleagues who had moved abroad. But his collection, as a child, always fascinated me. So when I grew up, and I stopped spending my money on nights out, cars, and alcohol, I started buying a few of these coins here and there. Now I wouldn't call myself a coin collector, but some of these coins have fantastic designs on them and deserve to be shown and not just kept in a box, hence why I want to build this coin cabinet. Right, so with the joints cleaned up I can then progress onto the box assembly. Now this project would lend itself really well to dominoes, but I don't have a Festool domino, so I'm going to have to resort to dowels. So I've just gone to drill the dowel holes in the top and bottom of this box, and I realise I've made a little bit of a mistake. I've jumped ahead of myself. I was a little bit premature, and well, let me show you. So as you already saw, I've already rounded over the edges on the top and bottom of this box, and I've cut the shadow line in it. Now I've jumped a little bit ahead here because this is my dialing jig. I have nothing to reference this off of apart from a curve. So I'm not going to get this in the centre where I need it, and the problem is I can't adjust this stop any further to get me in the position I want to. So what I've had to do is I've had to mark up on here where the edge of the sides come to, transfer the middle mark across, and then draw a centre line there, and then hopefully if I line the dialing jig holes up with the centre line in some other marks that I've put on there, I should be able to get that in the same places as the holes in the side. Now thankfully at school maths was one of my best subjects, so spoiler alert here, I actually got this perfect. I absolutely nailed it spot on, and I don't want to sound too surprised that I achieved it, but I did take my time marking all this out, referencing the side panels of this coin cabinet and double checking and taking my time. It just went together absolutely perfectly. Thankfully this was a maths equation, just don't ask me to spell anything with 6 or 7 letters in. Now when it comes to the glue up, I hadn't really considered how I was going to go about it. I thought I would just put the dowels in, put the sides in, put the top on. But because the dowels are a really tight fit, I didn't want one side going down further than the other one. So I came up with putting clamps on everything. This way I can ensure that I'm clamping everything equally and level. So by constantly twisting each clamp, half a turn, full turn on each side, this glue up went together absolutely trouble free. So after leaving the glue on the coin cabinet to dry overnight, I came back the next day. Now what I'm going to do now is a little trick that I learned from watching Padula Studios video. I'm going to use this flush trim router bit with a bearing at the top to follow the shape of the top of this coin cabinet. That way the corners for the side of this coin cabinet will be the same shape as the corners for the top and bottom. I'm not going to lie, it was a little bit nerve-wracking doing this because I really didn't want to get any chip out, because if I did get any chip out on these corners it would ruin the project and I'd have to start all over again. But taking my time, all went well in the end. So obviously the flush trim router bit isn't long enough to go all the way down the sides of this box, so I'm going to use a plane here to plane down the sides to get them roughly to the same shape. I would have been better off using a block plane here, but I looked high and low and I just couldn't find it anywhere, so I settled on this number 5 plane. Now I've got them down to sort of a rough shape of the box, I'll just come back with a sander and finish it all off and get it all nice and smooth and even. Right, so now you might be thinking, well, where's this back panel? Well, instantly as soon as I glued this coin cabinet up, I realised I hadn't slid in the back panel. So I had to get inventive and try and make this back panel fit into this cabinet carcass whilst it was all assembled. Now luckily I'm using some ash veneered MDF here, so what I managed to do was to bend it over a chisel in one corner and get that slotted in, then bend the next corner in and then give it a little tap with the mallet, and luckily it slotted in the 2 grooves that I'd already cut in the side without too much trouble. Now as I mentioned, the drawer fronts are going to be made from ash, so I did all the normal processing of this on the planer and then I cut the drawer fronts out on the table saw. So this is what I'm going to use for the drawer bases. Now this is 3mm ash veneered MDF, and on its own it wouldn't be sturdy enough and there's nowhere for the coins to slot into, so I need to put an extra layer on top. So I'm just going to use this normal 3mm thick MDF, but I've also bought this red felt that I'm going to stick across the top of it. Hopefully my thinking is this will finish the drawers off a little bit more, make it look a little bit more of an upmarket coin cabinet, and the coin should stand out a little bit better in the red felt. Now if you can see through the smoke, I actually used my laser cutter to cut out these circles perfectly, and the laser will cut through the felt and the MDF. So after gluing those bits onto the ash veneered MDF, I was left with these. And you can see that they slide into this coin cabinet really well. Now with the drawer fronts, off camera I cut a housing joint into the middle of them, which is around 7mm thick, and the idea is that the drawer bases are going to slide into them. And to fix the drawer bases in place, I'm going to use some of this 1 minute epoxy, so I've got to be really quick here. And because I've already got the drawer bases in the box lined up ready to go, now it's just a matter of sliding these drawer fronts onto the drawer bases before the epoxy goes off. Now this is something that I procrastinated about for quite a while. I didn't know whether to add a chamfer to these drawer fronts. After trying it out on several test pieces, I decided I preferred the look of this coin cabinet with the chamfers on the drawer fronts. So now when it comes to handles, I was going to use these brushed nickel ones, but when I've put them on the box fronts, I felt that they stuck out a little bit too far. If they'd have been a little bit shorter, I think these would have been ideal. However, I decided to make my own, and this is what I came up with. I'm using some offcuts of the rosewood. Now to get these handles fitted to the drawers so they're perfectly in the middle, I've marked here on this bottom drawer where the handle should be if it's placed in the centre. Because I don't want to use any hardware on this box, I'm going to go for the wood glue and super glue method. So the super glue will form a temporary fix whilst the wood glue dries to form a permanent fix. Because now I've put these bevels on these drawers, I'm now going to put the drawer handle level with the bottom of each bevel. And then to fit the rest of the drawer handles, I'm going to use my speed square, line it up against this bottom handle, and then I'll reference all the others off of that. So there's not much left to do now with this coin cabinet. I finished it off with a bit of hand sanding. I used my chisel to clean up some of the epoxy squeeze out in the drawers and then gave that a final sanding. I removed the pencil marks from the bottom drawer where I originally lined up the first handle. And then finally I can get onto the finish stage. I'm just going to use some boiled linseed oil here. I think I ended up putting on 3 coats in total. I really like how the boiled linseed oil has made this rosewood grain just instantly pop and stand out. And also the other reason I went for boiled linseed oil is because I knew it wouldn't change the overall colour of the ash drawer fronts. Well, there you go. This is my finished coin cabinet. I am really pleased with the outcome of this. It took me way too long to make this. But I'm glad I took my time because I couldn't be happier with it. There's nothing I would change on it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.